and I'm proposing a motion on behalf of the Natural Beekeeping Trust. The motion, as I see it, is about change, doing things differently in the future, the way forward. Today, we see problems with bees right across the world. Many reasons are given for this, but I contend that the mindset of modern beekeepers is part of the problem. We all want healthy bees, but how do we achieve that? What should our mindset be for us as beekeepers if we want vibrant, healthy bees? The conventional approach promises bee health through actions by beekeepers. Artificial breeding, suppression of natural reproduction, frequent hive inspections, chemical treatments, increased biosecurity. The list is in fact endless. In contrast, natural beekeeping sees the solution as lying in the actions by the bees. The role of the beekeeper is to help the bee to exist as nature intended, not to force the bee to exist as man thinks she should. Put another way, conventional beekeepers demand control over nature. Natural beekeepers follow a path of trust in nature. If we lose our trust in something, it is not long before we begin to fear it. It is fear of nature, in my view, that breeds the desire for control over nature. Everything we do as gardeners, farmers and beekeepers, we do in the context of the natural world. The natural approach is to allow nature to establish a balance. Conversely, if we seek to dominate the world with ever more control, physical and chemical, we will eventually destroy the world. And if we destroy the natural world, we destroy ourselves. Let's examine the evidence for that statement that we are destroying the natural world. The natural world has existed for millions of years. Bees have existed for millions of years. Agriculture has existed for a few thousand years. Intensive agriculture for maybe 100 years. Looking at that 100 years of intensive agriculture, can we see any change in the productivity of the landscape? Let's look at honey yields. A book called The Handy Book of Bees was published in 1875. The author was a sceptist and allowed his bees to swarm. Today, we'd call him a natural beekeeper. He judged the progress of his colonies by weighing them. He says that the weight of a prime swarm in its skep at the end of the season could easily be 125 pounds. Imagine that, 125 pounds in a straw skep. A skep itself does not weigh much, so most of this weight is bees, comb and honey. But that's not all. Add the mother hive, he gives that at about 80 pounds, and maybe a cast, and the total weight at the end of the season was often 200 to 300 pounds. 200 to 300 pounds of bees, comb and honey in one season from one hive. Granted, these figures refer to the good years, but even today, they seem to us simply incredible. BBKA figures show that the average yield per hive today is around 25 pounds, having fallen from around 40 pounds 20 years ago. To me, this demonstrates a dramatic decline in the productivity of our landscape. Compared with 100 years ago, we live in a world that is substantially impoverished. Throughout this time, agriculture and beekeeping have been dominated by the approach of control over nature. Hence my statement that the control mentality, the fear mentality, is destroying nature. What does control over nature mean in the context of bees, and what are the consequences? Here is a list of some of the things conventional beekeeping advocates. And I recognise that not all conventional beekeepers do all of these things. Removing the natural food of the bee, honey, and replacing it with sugar. Look through a microscope at the stomach of a bee fed only sugar. Parts of it will be shriveled. The stomach of a bee fed only honey is plump. Honey contains 180 different substances. To bees, it is not the same as sugar. Natural beekeepers allow their bees to keep and live on their own honey. Artificially enlarging the brood nest. Forcing bees to make large brood nests breaks the synchrony between the bee and the environment and increases varroa loads. Natural beekeepers do not artificially enlarge the brood nest, nor practice stimulatory sugar feeding. Suppressing swarming. Swarming is the way bees reproduce. We all know that. It creates genetic diversity. In bees, high genetic diversity correlates with health. If you suppress swarming, you lower genetic diversity. This harms health. Natural beekeepers allow their bees to reproduce by swarming and do not artificially rear queens. Importing bees and queens. According to meteorologists, no other country in the world has weather as variable as ours. So how can imported bees of any type be suited to our climate? We are told bee farmers can only survive by importing bees. What does that say about the state of British beekeeping? Natural beekeepers source their bees from local swarms. Using neurotoxins and acids to control varroa. These chemicals also harm bees. It's in fact why I gave up any varroa treatment some years ago. Even soft varroa treatments adversely affect bees. There are growing numbers of non-treatment beekeepers around the country, and varroa does not run out of control in their hives. I'm one, and I can see several others in this room tonight. Using comb foundation. Bees naturally build a variety of cell sizes smaller than the size of cells in commercial foundation. They do this for a reason. So why stop them? Also, why use someone else's wax? Do you have any idea what it contains? Weekly detailed hive inspections. In effect, this is opening up the organism that is the bee, when one realizes that the whole colony is the organism. It is done to spread the brood, control swarming, and often simply to satisfy curiosity. Imagine you have a cat. If you opened it up once a week to check that its insides were okay, how long would it survive? Natural beekeepers observe hives from the outside. Occasionally, interference may be necessary, but only when the bees truly need it. Finally, it is sometimes said that natural beekeeping is irresponsible and leads to unhealthy bees which spread disease. The evidence suggests the opposite. The disease-spreading myth illustrates, to my mind, the fear of nature driving the desire to control nature. People no longer trust nature to do what she does naturally. She's been doing rather well for millions of years and will continue to do well if we place our trust in her. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, trust is free. Learn to trust nature and work within her rules. I urge you to support the notion that natural beekeeping is the way forward for British beekeepers. Thank you.